Thanks for having me here, Francois. Thank you for the invite, and thanks for your time today. Octo Consulting has been great to GitHub so far. I'm here today to talk about what we're seeing as trends from GitHub. I will talk a little bit about GitHub in the middle of the presentation. I think this audience is both technical and business, so I know the developers know what GitHub is. Dive into it in a little bit. What we see today in software, and our CEO talks about this a lot, is the beginning of the new century of software. We don't really know where it's going. We don't know what benefit we're going to get from it, but we're at the beginning. Just like we had transportation in 1916, 2016, no one really knows. Advances in science for our health. You're going to see a presentation at the end of going to Mars. Everything is revolving around software and code. If I think about how transportation's been changed by this company, and I know it's a sensitive topic, so I was trying to figure out if I should actually put Uber up in France. But the car manufacturers I talk to about software, they're very concerned about Uber because they don't know if they're going to be selling cars in the future or they're going to be selling transportation services. My car is sitting at the airport right now. No one's using it, but I'm paying for it. Insurance, gas, etc. Everything is changing in this regard. And it comes from this, right? It's not enough just to have a good idea, but it's to act upon it. Uber was a reaction to having a bad taxi cab experience. And this man, for software, does everyone know who this is? Linus Torvalds and the Linux project? He had a problem. And the problem is that he was designing some software with thousands of developers located all over the world, but they couldn't sit down in a conference room to meet. Traditional software development, you make a plan, you go and you code, you come back and you talk about it. How was he going to talk about his software projects because there was no room to meet in? So he designed something called Git. It's an English term. You can ask your English friends what it means. It's not a good term, but that's Linus for you. And he used this to design Linux, basically allowing people to copy code onto their personal computers, make a change, and then send it back to him. He would look at it, and then he would accept it or not. But it was a way to get thousands of people all over the world to work on a project. It was his scratch that he needed to itch that now has become a worldwide phenomenon, similar to GitHub. So GitHub's foundation, and I have to give a little bit of background to explain the new developer and social coding. GitHub's background was also a mistake. It was a product long before it was a company. The people made GitHub was making something called fam spam. Have you ever heard of fam spam? No, because it was supposed to compete with Facebook. But when they were using Git, because they also were using developers from all over the world, they found that Git was hard to work with. There was not an easy way to copy code, not an easy way to talk about code, share comments online. The guys who created GitHub were about 20 years old. Have you seen kids these days sitting on a couch next to each other, texting to each other, even though they're sitting right next to each other? This is the way people are working. Socially, they're playing socially, they play games online, so everything was online. The founders of GitHub, they made a hub to sit on top of Git. Linus Torvalds' product is free. GitHub also, the code that surrounds it, we made that free for all the developers of the world to use if they kept their projects open. So any developer starts a project. For instance, JPL, you're going to hear a speech at the end about going to Mars. They have open source projects that they use GitHub for. It's the largest repository of code in the world. It's the largest community of developers in the world. It's the largest workshop in the world for people coming together building products together. And it's about 40 million projects, about 40 million people. And it's made the website itself around number 65 in popularity worldwide. It's collaborative software development, and it's really in this social world that we live in. So who are these millions of people that come? Everybody thinks it's just developers, and it's not. I used to give this presentation and talk about children, how children start to code or develop code when they're like 9 or 10. They find some application that lets them start to build little bits of code. And then when they can get online when they're 14, at least in the United States, the legal age to get online is around 14. They get online, and what do you think they start to work on first? What's the one thing kids want to do with software? A game. They want to go hack a game, change it, use it for themselves. They start hacking on a game. Then they find their community that they work with, and they develop a profile for themselves. They learn about code, they learn about how to work inside a community, and they take this with them in these profiles that they create through the developer learning cycle. These profiles look like this. Millions of people have these profiles today. It's the way that they explain themselves in this giant workshop. This is who I am. These boxes on the bottom, believe it or not, if you're a developer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The boxes become so important because it shows your work, your contribution to the community of open source, your contribution to code. It's so prevalent today that any business that is going to hire a developer, they'll look at the resume for 2 seconds just to search and find the GitHub handle. Matthew has a normal GitHub handle. Most people don't. Space Bunnies, Fuzz Monster, you name it. But that's their GitHub handle, and this is their profile online. And they take pride with this, and they carry it with them into their job. The employer looks to see, is the code good? Are they a good person in the community? Is this a person we want to hire? Similar to people are doing searches on Facebook now to find out what kind of person you are. I don't know if they allow that so much here in France, but this is really attributable to what kind of person you are in the community. Reverse the employee that you might hire. That person's going to look at your company. Same thing. What kind of people am I going to work for? What kind of code do they make? What kind of people are they to work for in their community? So having a community profile is the first one. Social coding is the first thing, is create a profile, find your community. And when you're in open source, this is where they find their lessons to learn. What is it about open source that's so special? Well, number one, it's open. When you're working on a project, everything's open. Everybody sees your work. Everybody can comment on your work. It's not, it's comments like in line, you know, like everything is there to see. Just as I showed you the profile, you can see how people comment on their code. They can reuse the lessons, they can reuse the code. They have lots of eyes on the problem. Engineers are a particular bunch. They like to fix problems, and they like to fix other people's problems. So having a community that works together in open source as developers, software developers, coders, it just became a very happy way to make software, and the most successful software projects in the world are on open source. Didn't used to be this way. OSCON is an open source conference. 18 years ago, it was 30 people in a basement. People thought they were crazy, that they were doing open source software projects. No one would use open source. Too risky, not good software. You'd be surprised who use open source today. Governments, intelligence agencies, all using open source because the quality of the code is simply better. Today, OSCON is filled with thousands of people, developers, as well as business people. General Motors, Huawei, UBS, Societe Generale, all of them are coming to OSCON. Why? Because the world of open source and closed business systems, closed companies, are starting to merge. And I have some great examples at the very end of this. Sorry. Come on. When businesses take the lessons of open source back into their company, it's hard. They want to work collaboratively. They want to be able to share code. They want to have each project not repeat the same mistakes. They want each project not to create the same software over and over again. And the reason that companies, you can take the picture on the next slide. The reason companies do this is because they're finding, I clicked too many times. The reason companies do this is because they're finding that there's too much of making the same code over and over again. Projects don't talk to each other. Divisions don't talk to each other. Their people don't talk to each other. And so they end up hiring experts all over the world when they could actually share expertise. But in order to do this, you have to be open. You have to be transparent. And this is from the previous senior vice president of products at Google, basically saying any company can be open and transparent. It's not hard to do. However, to do it, you need to broadcast secrets. Things that you used to think you should keep alone, keep quiet and not share with others, you got to start sharing that. And it's hard to do because it illuminates work. People can't hide anymore. They have to show their work. They have to show their comments. This is something from Eric Schmidt. Every board of directors meeting at Google, they share the presentation with the entire company. They put a big warning on there that this is private and don't leak it, but it's actually never been leaked. Surprising. That's what he says. Maybe it has. We don't know. I've never seen it. So this open source to inner source, making that transition, if you remember what I talked about with students learning how to code, the same thing happens inside a business. If you don't have a developer lifecycle, if you don't have a way to get people trained on code, working together to make code, or working on a project, you're not able to share. This developer lifecycle looks like this: learning, coding, and working. It's going to become important because everybody's going to start doing this, not just coders, but learning how to find code and use it, how to master new code, how to code together and ship code, and then how to organize around a project to deliver something of benefit to the company. That's just learning how to code, and then learning how to work together. Most important is when you think about the future. If you have an iPhone or an Android phone and you move your applications around, 10 years ago, you had to code. You had to know how to code to do that. Today, you take it for granted. You move applications on your phone. You delete some, you add some. You had to know how to code 10 years ago to do that. This monk, I actually typed in European monks, and I got him. I don't know what country he's from. The monks had a monopoly on writing and reading for hundreds of years. And then this all changed, right? People were illuminated, the Renaissance. People learned how to read and to write. Today, coding is the province of a select few. It's a closed community, but it's getting open every day. This is Adam Seligman from Salesforce. I've never met him. I actually have a meeting with him in 2 weeks' time. He runs their cloud products division. They're starting to target non-coders for everything that they do in their developer community. They have something called App Builder. App Builder sits on code. And App Builder allows people that are not developers to manipulate software to do their work. Some of the job titles you're going to hear that are going to be the first ones over: business analyst, biochemist, data scientist. Today, these people have to learn how to code in order to do their job appropriately. And that's not what they went to school for. That's not their passion. That's not their desire. Their desire is to be a business analyst. So if the world can give them the tools to create the applications to mine the data they need, you cut out steps in the process of getting better at your job. Developers will always be king. There's not enough work. There's not enough developers for all the work that we have right now. Code will power everything. But code will enable these applications to be built for these new job titles. Every job is going to be influenced by software. It is already. You play with software. But giving you the power to make your own applications in the future is going to be quite compelling. It's about community, and it's about code. Building a community of people inside your company, and building a code base to work from. We know that no closed system thrives for very long, because there's an environment around it that influences it. That was just an example. This is a very interesting, I don't know what the equation actually results in, but if you start to play in open source and you open yourself up to the world, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. I don't know if you know what Predix is. Predix is something General Electric has. GE makes millions and millions of machines, as you know, and they put sensors on every one of them. They have billions of sensors on millions of machines all over the world. And all those sensors push the data into Predix. And General Electric uses Predix to provide services to its customers. And this year, they opened it up to developers. They allowed developers all over the world to create applications on top of their platform. Why? Because applications are the competitive high ground. Applications and big data. Whoever owns the community and owns the applications are going to rule. It's where the applications are built. GE is creating this huge community, building applications for them. Why? There are 380,000 people, and they realize they're not as smart as the whole world. Maybe it's that 16-year-old girl in Bolivia that comes up with the application for electronics transfer. And guess what? She created it for the world on their platform. So owning community and owning code is huge. Here's an example from Goldman Sachs. In 2013, Bloomberg makes these terminals that you all know about to give financial data to traders. They have a chat tool inside those terminals as well. And in 2013, some employees at Bloomberg were watching chat amongst traders, and they used that to do inside trading. Goldman Sachs got 15 competitors, right? Think about this. Competitors, and said, let's go build an open source chat tool that we control for our own use. So they invested the money, about $66 million, and they created Symphony. They all invested in a second company or a third company or whatever outside company, and now it's the #1 chat tool for secure financial services trading. Pretty amazing. It's an example, again, of where the applications are run and built is where the power is going to be. And it's an example of opening your systems. These guys always competed, and they decided to work together on this. And we see this coming over and over. If you look on GitHub, you can see the projects out there now. Again, I go back to community and code. Interestingly, it's not just code. GitHub is now used by the French government. They put the laws, the legal, the criminal law and the civil law is sitting on GitHub for commentary by the citizenry. I don't know if you know that. Obama puts his 2016 budget on GitHub and lets the agencies comment on the budget. So it's becoming a way to create a community around code, and it's expanding. It's not just code anymore. Innovation is recognized as the single most important ingredient to a modern economy. I don't know if you believe this or not. You don't have to. The answer can be no, for sure, because survival isn't mandatory. You don't have to survive. If you think back to the picture I showed you about the automotive industry, right? That was in 1916. I didn't concentrate on the names that were up there. Daimler is still here, but there were a whole bunch of names on that picture that aren't here today. And I think that 1% success rate amongst startups, but they're coming. It's a gold rush right now in terms of how fast innovation around software is happening, and it's all based on code and in the community of people that build it. So in the end, I'll just tell you that more people, more code, more innovation equals more power. Thank you very much for your time.